clap check and then broadcasting.
Broadcasting was the last thing I did.
He just said he's broadcasting.
All right.
Wow, you guys got a lot of cards.
All mine are expired. I need to throw them all
Any
away.
amount of cards looks like a lot compared to no cards at all.
Excuse me, the last couple of shows, I've brought mine to the show. Just saying.
Excuse me. All right. You're listening to episode 113 of PHP Ugly.
113.
I'm your host, Eric Van Johnson. Interrupting me as usual is my good friend, John the Star Congdon.
Hola. 113. Why have we done so many of these things?
I'm not
crazy.
sure.
I'm
I haven't
very
gotten
lonely.
paid for any of them. Also with me tonight, Thomas Right Out. Everything that popped in my head was so inappropriate. I didn't want to put it out there.
Oh, I know. I could read it on your face. You ran through 2 seconds of horrible, insulting things and then just said my last name. It's good to be here anyways, though.
Yeah, so you say we haven't gotten paid for anything. We should start a Patreon account. I'm sure there's all of a half a person that wants to contribute.
I already did. There's no...
Well, so why do you want to disappoint yourself like that, John?
What do you mean you started one? You can't get people to contribute if you don't tell people it's out there.
Yeah, you weren't there for that episode.
Was I there? Did you have an episode without us? Is there really a Patreon out there with our
I started one, but then it's all like, tell us about you, and I got real self-conscious and stopped.
So you didn't actually
Imagine if a stranger is like, hey, do you have a podcast? And you're like, yeah, I actually do have a podcast. And they're like, what's it about? And you're like, so what are you up to this weekend? Because that was the chain of events for signing up for Patreon.
I sit around with my jerk friends and they all make fun of me.
Oh, you're too
John's
much,
nice
Thomas.
to me.
Johnson,
Not always.
I get a lot of criticism about giving you a hard time, Thomas, and I feel like I am the most loving guy with you of everybody on the team. I care for you more than you care for yourself, but everybody gives me a hard time and says I'm a big meanie and I should stop doing what I do, and it hurts my feelings. I have feelings too.
Because you guys happen to have good conversation, you're mean.
So what have you guys been up to this week?
Wow, that was a weird transition.
We're touching on a topic that just Thomas doesn't want. He's not ready to discuss right now.
No, I just have a head cold. I can't get into it.
Me too. I'm
Right.
just getting over mine. I had to
You've
do
been
a
listening,
talk.
you've been listening to PHP Ugly. I'm John Congdon.
I told John I had to
I
do
know.
a talk last night at the user group SDPHP, which
I saw that.
we live streamed here on PHP Ugly.
And he
Saw
did
that.
an awesome job. I was actually very shocked.
You know what wasn't in the live stream?
You see, people listening to the show, that's me. Those backhanded compliments from John, Eric did really well. I mean, it was surprising. That's what mean is. That's the definition of mean.
No.
Jerks.
We don't use a lot of NoSQL in our environment, and you knew way more about NoSQL, a bunch of different options than I did. Like, I know a lot of those are out there, but the fact that you had examples and you had like, hey, let's play with this one, and actually got into it.
And in the previous
I was
podcast, he had
impressed.
said that he didn't know NoSQL, and this was going to be a terrible meetup.
Well, I mean, he did that at the beginning of his talk too. He's like, this will be about a 10-minute talk. Turned out to be like 2 hours. People start looking at their watches like, is he going to stop talking anytime soon?
It turned out to be a very long talk, I know. But I was telling John, I was sick last week, like especially near the end of the week. I don't remember how it was for the show, but man, I was so sick by Friday, and I had said I had been pushing off doing the talk. I'm like, I'll just do it this weekend. and I straight up slept through Saturday. Like, I was probably awake Saturday for like 3 hours of the entire day. And I got up Sunday. I'm like, oh crap, I've got to get something done here. I don't want to sit. I don't want to sit this meetup and look like a total idiot. So I just want to look like a partial idiot. And so I put some stuff together. Fortunately, I have been looking into this enough where I had some ideas of things to talk about. But
Did good.
it's frustrating. I tried to do it again, and I wasn't feeling great, all that, but I've done this before, and I've had the same problem. I like to do code examples because we're developers. We're PHP developers. That's what we do for a living. So I really like to have code examples for the group. And every package that I try to implement for all the document stores, the NoSQL document stores like CouchDB, Mongo, every package I tried to implement, every one of them didn't work. And it's so frustrating because I feel like I would actually use some of these NoSQL solutions more. It's just, I don't know. It's frustrating to me. And I don't know why. I get frustrated with myself too, because I don't know why I'm so dependent on packages, especially with CouchDB solution. I've used CouchDB in applications before where I've just written my own service around Guzzle because it's all HTTP protocols. That's how you interact with it. So it's not that difficult. It's just I didn't feel like doing it this weekend. There are packages out there. I feel like I should have been able to install one of these packages. And these packages look very promising from the Laravel communities because they're presented as a drop-in into the Eloquent model. So not only are you using these NoSQL solutions like Mongo or CouchDB, but you're using it in the typical Eloquent fashion, which does look appealing to me. Now I haven't done that before, but like none of them work. It's so frustrating, man. I couldn't get any of them working. But yeah, in doing the research for the talk again, yeah, I've got to say, using a document store is definitely in my future. The more I think about it, the more I position my data sets to use UUIDs, and the idea of taking a user UUID and attaching it to some document in a document store. That just seems so appealing to me, as opposed to trying to keep whatever the document is representing in a relational database, just throwing it in a document store. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing that.
So would you do just ancillary data, or are you talking about like a complete application?
Yeah. I baby steps for me. So yeah, it would be ancillary data. Just like I think I would be pretty aggressive with it. But I pull up short of committing to not using relational databases. I'm just not there yet. But
we have David on our team. You mentioned him last night at the meetup, who most people tell me that are used to MySQL say, well, give me a reason to use NoSQL solutions. And he's completely the other way. Tell me why you would need a relational database. Like he's all in NoSQL. And
he's pretty adamant about it.
And it's just, I want to be there and I just can't.
So, and I feel like I have arguments for both ends. The argument I made last night that so many people are able to relate to, and Thomas, I'm sure you're able to relate to this, is as developers, how many times have you had to create a column in a table or create a completely new table to represent maybe 5% of your data? Because there's this fraction of your data that needed this extra piece of information. You now have to carry this extra baggage of a column or another table or something like that.
Or a migration too. A production migration is like my total nightmare.
Right. And so with NoSQL solutions, I I explain why that obstacle isn't in front of you. It's if you have a document that needs extra data, you just put the extra data in the document. It's no big deal. The burden's on you as a developer on how you use that data and knowing that data is there and accessible. I mean, that's the one thing. So to flip that script, the drawback to NoSQL solutions is I can't look anywhere and see a structure of my data. I can't look at something and say, okay, here's what all my user data consists of, because every record can have different information. And they all have like these query languages, and I don't know, maybe it is just a matter of learning that query language, but still for me, it's so much easier to look at a table in a database tool like SQL Pro or Table Plus and look how data is related and say, okay, I want to select this from here, that from there, this from there, and see where the data is, in my architecture. And with NoSQL solutions, you don't have that. You have no way of knowing what's in all the documents. You don't even know if all the documents are user documents. I mean, you hope there are user documents if that's how you have your database structured, but there's no guarantees. So that's the biggest concern for me. I mean, I actually ran into that today.
So for the main project I work on, it's basically a CRM, and I keep wanting to use it just for that because there's so much data involved with a single user. And the big thing is leads. But people can have millions of leads in there. So I don't want to load all that into a JSON. One, that I just couldn't with memory constraints. So I that's where I can't get my head around. How do you make all that work?
So all the leads would have all of their information in there, right?
Yeah, they have all the pretty much same information as a user, name, address, phone number, email address, plus a slew of other data that goes with it. And it's how do you load the data you need properly without loading the entire document?
Right. So this is where talking through it with somebody like David's helpful. For me, for something like that, because there's no SQL doesn't mean that you can't have relationships. And so for me, I would have probably the leads be every lead be its own separate document, and then who that lead belongs to would be a UUID in that leads document, and you would query that way.
Yeah. But then you're back to a relational database.
Well, but you are, and again, not understanding your complete data structure, but what that frees you up with is the information related to that lead doesn't have to be consistent. Like, I don't know if that applies, but it's kind of like that. It's like each lead could have different pieces of data that maybe another lead doesn't have to have.
Which happens all the time. Yeah.
So that's where you would kind of get a little bit of a win with that. I mean, honestly, been doing this long enough. It seems like NoSQL solutions are going to have a place in every architecture. I don't know if I'll ever be like David, where I will be one of these people who says I don't need relational databases anymore. I see a marriage.
I bet if you got a good application under your belt where it was all NoSQL, you might be in that same boat. It's having that confidence to use it. It would be my guess. He had this aha moment, like, oh, this is how I'm going to do it, and
yeah.
So now it's always that way.
And it's very appealing with your data stores being your API endpoints. I mean, that just takes so much development time off the table. If you've already got API endpoints with the data you need, that's why you get that agile development right there.
But it seems like the natural progression for OOP development is OOP databases.
Yeah.
I had a meetup
And
too.
Well, let me touch on one more thing. Not to cut you off, Thomas. I'm glad you had a meetup. I'm glad you went. I want to talk. I want to ask you about that. My cat is here eating my pot. Look at this. I want you guys to see
Your
this.
pot? What?
Look at this guy. This guy is sitting here. This cat. We adopted these kittens. I understand listeners of the podcast aren't seeing the video, but for the last couple of weeks, if you watch the video, you've seen a little kitten or two little kittens jumping on me as I'm broadcasting. And tonight's no exception. One of the kittens is jumping on me. So we adopted these kittens probably a month or two ago, probably about 2 months ago now. And they still live like they're feral cats. I mean, the damn cats eat anything on the floor. Like they don't know where their next meal is coming from. Even though they always have food down, always have water down. These cats will. I caught one eating my cough drop when I was not feeling well last week. I'm like, they eat anything. I don't know what the hell's wrong with these cats.
Is there food next to their water?
Yeah.
Why? That's why.
Really? Why? What?
Cats-
Wait, I don't get it.
Cats inherently distrust food that's next to water because water spoils food for cats. Water will cause spoilage. Also, cats' whiskers get overstimulated by bowls. You should be feeding them on a plate because the edges of the bowls, they don't want to eat into the edges. It overstimulates them.
No kidding.
Yeah. So when
You
you
know,
switch,
I can't tell when you're BSing me and when you really have like good information.
how do I feel about my
Okay.
cats?
Okay, I heard that. I see why people say it mean to you.
See, Eric's got his microphone on in his own headset for today's episode, so he's hearing himself for the first time.
So so the last thing I wanted to touch on from our meetup is one of the principles or concepts around NoSQL solution was this eventual consistency. And how funny of a term I thought that was when I first heard it. And the first time I heard the term of eventual consistency, I said, okay, right there is why I will never use NoSQL, because that is a ridiculous statement. And then, of course, now that I've gotten the exposure and I have actually used it a little bit, I understand the eventual consistency statement. And it was fun kind of explaining that to people of
It means like milliseconds.
No. I mean, it's like, because of the nature of NoSQL, the databases actually are easy to replicate. And so entire databases will be replicated to mobile devices. And those mobile devices can go offline. And so that's what allows the mobile device to continue to work with a data set when it's offline. And then when it comes back online, and it could be, minutes, hours, days, when it comes back online, it starts to replicate its data. And eventually you'll get consistency of your data. So, all right. I'm sorry, Thomas, you said you had a meetup. Anything interesting? Any cool things happen? Any giveaways?
No.
What?
that was a quick conversation.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. That's
It
the
was
wrong
an issue.
response.
It's an issue that we've encountered before. So it was me and Brian Johnson, Wave PHP speaker Brian Johnson.
Thank you.
About to say the same thing.
And his presentation was on TDD.
Good topic. Yes.
So it's a really fortunate topic because I've never done TDD, and the
Really?
method he was presenting was very interesting. We had a lot to talk about with this whole method. It included a gulp file. His presentation had a gulp file that committed every time he wrote one line of code.
That committed to the repo?
Yes.
It ran the test. Wait, what?
No, he's saying it committed.
It committed. So he was going. He went to a Ruby meetup where they discussed this method, and it's from a book. I feel terrible. I forgot the name of it, but it's about TDD, and it's this incredibly meticulous method that's designed to get you into very specific habits for eventual refactor of code and code style and how to detect smells before they develop into full-blown problems. And it was this very fascinating method, which, like I said, is really good because it was just me and him.
Nobody else showed up, huh?
What?
No.
I don't believe you.
Did
Really?
one of you forget to put it on Meetup or something?
No, there were 6 people who were registered to attend, and you know how this goes.
Mm.
You know, it rained for about 5 minutes before the meetup, like an hour before the meetup,
Mhm.
which means that everyone who marked themselves to attend just was like, "Oh, Jesus, it's raining. We can't go
Not putting
now."
up with that traffic.
Right. So,
Yeah.
you know, and we've had this problem. We've had meetups where it was me and you and John, or me and Eric and John and Frank.
I say I think the smallest we've ever had it was about half a dozen, about
That was
6 or 7.
It was my talk. I remember it very clearly. And it was rough. I know that feeling of people not showing up and how you sort of invest yourself into something. And you know, he
Yeah.
had pizza and soda, and I felt awful, but I know how that goes, that you can't control attendance at meetups. And you know, Colorado Springs is not the hotbed of PHP development. That's Denver is where
Yeah.
you would go for it. And he
Right.
goes to the meetups in Denver.
I was saying
Um,
you guys have a meetup there now too.
Yeah, there is a Denver PHP meetup. There's a
Mhm.
couple JavaScript, Ruby, React, things like that. And those are the more popular meetups. So I'm presenting at the next Peak PHP meetup,
Mhm.
and I'm hoping that one other person shows up, but not too
maybe-
many people, because I don't want him to feel like it was him that was the problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is not what John and I want to hear, seeing how Brian is a Wave PHP speaker. Maybe they were all
Well,
waiting.
no,
to-
It was it was great. He did a really great job, and he did lots of live coding. He knew what he was doing back and forth. You know, and he had only gone through the presentation once before. It was a presentation that he was co-opting from a Ruby presentation. And yeah, he's a great speaker. I'm all for seeing him present. He's going to be presenting PHP Unit at the conference,
Mhm.
A beginner's guide.
which is a presentation that he's given at Peak PHP that I really enjoyed. It was a great work.
Well,
So I
that's
know
good to hear.
he's
But
polishing it and putting it ready for the conference.
now the more important question, in his slide deck, did he have anything about Wave PHP? And when he went to Denver, did he promote it?
He
Important topics.
had the sticker on his laptop. He didn't have a slide deck, and the first thing I said when I saw him was congratulations on Wave PHP. So he didn't have to like announce to the group that he was speaking at Wave PHP.
And John, Denver PHP is run by Amanda Folsom, who is also a Wave PHP speaker presenter.
What's she
So,
presenting?
Amanda is presenting. I think she's actually doing 2 talks. She's doing Silence is Deadly. And was there another one? I thought she was
21st
doing
century
2.
DNS blacklists.
There you go. 21st century DNS blacklists. Yeah. So yeah.
Room A and Room B. You have multiple rooms. This is a 2-track. This is a 2-track conference.
2-track conference. Yes.
How did I not know that?
I don't know.
Because you don't like us. You don't talk to us.
It almost became a 3-track conference, actually. I mean, John and I debated very heavily about making a 3-track conference, but just I don't know. I mean, couldn't justify the expense of flying out that many more presenters.
Yeah.
It's
But-
going to be
Expense.
great. And you know what? I'm really excited to hear that Cal Evans is going to be the keynote speaker.
Cal Evans, yes.
Yeah.
Godfather PHP.
See, I had to be the one to say that because screw you guys for keeping me in the dark for 4 months. I watched Eric's YouTube stream of his presentation, hoping to catch who the keynote speaker was, and it's not in it.
It isn't it. It's in there. You got to watch the intro slides. It's in the intro slides. It was totally in there.
I'm still so upset at you guys.
We really thought you knew and were messing with us this entire time.
Yeah, exactly. I totally thought you had figured it out, Thomas, and you were just giving us a hard time.
I probably
Now-
should have spent some time trying to figure it out, but I threw out Rasmus, and then you said no, and I just sort of went, well, I don't know who it is.
I really wanted Rasmus, and I did reach out to him, and he did reply. He's a great guy. Did reply and just said that the timing wasn't going to work for him. And then, of course, I'm seeing him post all this stuff on Twitter about how he's in California driving around in his new Tesla. I'm like, drive that bitch down to San Diego, man. You're here.
Yeah, insanity
Jesus.
mode, doesn't it?
Exactly. But yeah, Cal was actually the first person who committed to Wave PHP. Obviously, nobody knows that, but
yeah, I reached out to him last year. He was my first choice. He's had such a big influence on me as a developer. Going back 8 years ago. So definitely wanted him as a speaker.
And I think we talked
keynoter.
about this. I think we talked about this on the show in the past, but I'll rehash it now that it's obvious who it is. You know, I've associated with Cal over Twitter for a while now. Cal is very if you're a user group organizer, you probably know Cal Evans because he will reach out to you. He's very helpful. He's always there with advice and willing to help you out. So I've been talking to Cal for years over Twitter, and I ran into him first time in real life. We kept missing each other at conferences. He even came out here to San Diego
he kept seeing you first.
for a WordPress conference or something. And we kept saying, okay, let's meet up for drinks. Let's meet up for drinks. And we never met up for drinks. So when John and I went to Austin, I got to meet him. I'm like, Cal, hey, I'm Eric. I'm from San Diego. I'm so happy to finally meet you. He's like, hey, Eric, it's nice to meet you. I don't think it registered with him exactly who I was at the time. But I'm like, hey, looking forward to seeing you in San Diego at Wave PHP. And he just says, I don't know if I'm going to make that. Like, well, Cal, that's a big problem because you're a keynote speaker.
And then it hit him right at that point.
Yeah. Then
Eric hit him. Cal put a video up that you shared on, I believe, on Twitter.
Yeah.
And he's to be presenting Groupies, Roadies, and Rockstars, the various contributors to open source projects.
Which I think is a new talk. I don't think it's a talk he's done before.
No, he's done it before. And he says it's his favorite one. It's high energy. He loves doing it. And I was talking to him last week and I was like, we want to announce that you're the keynoter. And he goes, wait, I might have an idea. Give me the weekend. And then what was it, Saturday or Sunday? He sends us this video out of nowhere. And I was like, way to go. I like that.
It's great. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm getting excited about the conference and seeing it come together. Obviously, we're looking for more sponsors. I mean, the financial aspect of it is, a struggle. but the organization of the conference, I'm getting nervous about how well it's going. Like, I'm waiting to hear from the Bahia of saying, oh, hey, by the way, our audio video guy won't be here for your conference, so you guys have to come up with something else because it just seems like it's too easy to put things in place.
Yeah, everything's going well. The finances is the hard part. Luckily, we've been storing our nuts for a long time, and worst case, everything will be fine. But
I thought you got a vasectomy.
You don't
still there.
You understand how that works, right, Thomas?
What did I get done then?
Somebody owes you some answers. Get a couple nuts.
If only I could find my wife. I don't know where she is right now, actually.
Oh, that's convenient. Still have not found your wife.
She's a very busy woman.
We're still playing this game, huh?
No, she's teaching summer school.
At midnight.
Shh.
Oh gosh, Thomas. I really hope you come to grips with reality.
No, you don't. Then we have nothing to talk about. I have an article here.
Okay.
I need your guys' opinion. Python. Did you know that Python has a benevolent dictator for life?
Yes.
Guido van Rossum. And he has published notification that he is no longer interested in being benevolent dictator for life.
Interesting.
And
does he state a case?
He doesn't state a case, but he gives his reasons. Medical concerns that he doesn't want to get into. PEP 572 is God knows what that means.
PEP?
PEP. I don't know what PEPs are. I don't do Python.
Yeah, I do very little Python.
Python enhancement proposals. So it looks like it's the RFC track for Python improvements. And he stated that now that the whole thing is done, 572 is done, he doesn't want to have to fight for a PEP that hard again. And he thinks that the community can handle it, which is interesting. So he came out and said, I'm not going to appoint a successor. I am dropping it. I am dropping the whole thing in the hands of the community. Let's see what they do. And it's very interesting. He questions in his post, so what are you all going to do? Create a democracy, anarchy, a dictatorship, a federation? I'm not worried about the day-to-day decisions in the issue tracker or on GitHub. Very rarely I get asked for an opinion, and usually it's not actually important. So this can just be dealt with as it's always been dealt with.
I mean, it's just a different model. It's just a different open source model. We've talked in the past about some of the pros and cons of it. I'm kind of a fan of the of him stepping down. I can understand. I mean, I think every open source project needs one leader until it gets to a certain size, until it gets a certain amount of an ecosystem behind it where it's able to survive by itself. Too often, I think people, and I think this is part of the burnout people have with open source as well. Developers, open source developers have is a lot of times they start these projects and they don't want to have to babysit them. They want the community to take them over, but the community's not there all the time from the beginning, especially for smaller projects. But something large like Python, you let it mature. You let it make sure that it has a leadership that kind of shares the same values and direction that you see for the language. But yeah, I feel like when open source projects get to that level, it does make sense to take a step back. Because, I mean, unless you're making bank off of it, it's a huge burden. I couldn't imagine what it's like to run a project like Python or, I mean, even, Laravel we talk about a lot. I could imagine being the single bottleneck in those projects. So, yeah, I think it'll be good.
So that's one of the interesting things that came to me, though, is that he has the title, benevolent dictator for life, and talks about fighting over this proposal, which is to introduce a new operator for assigning variables within an expression. And it seems like if you have to fight for this thing that you're proposing, that's not really the dictator title that you think it is.
I was just going to say the same thing.
Because I can think of other projects under a benevolent dictator for life, and that's surprise features. That's just, hey, this feature's here all of a sudden. No one asked for it, but I love it.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's benevolent dictator.
Again, that's just up to the individual ruler. It's how they want to rule their kingdom. and he's let the community run Python for a while, and he's just slowly been absorbed in that community. Now he's just kind of making it official, I think, and stepping down and saying, okay, let's.
Well,
And
within
I always assumed when he was, so the Python community was the first place I had ever heard that expression, benevolent, or what's it called?
BDFLs, benevolent dictator for life.
Yeah, that was the first time I had ever heard it, and I always thought it was applied to him as kind of a joke honor of, hey, thank you for doing this. This is who you are to us, always moving forward. But I've always seen in practice, it's really been a community-driven language. Like, he's never exercised, or I don't follow Python that closely, so I shouldn't say never exercised, but I had never seen an instance where he kind of stopped the brakes on something that the community was supporting and said, no, I don't care for this, we're not implementing it.
Now, to be fair, Python is extraordinarily mature language.
And very old too, right?
Right. So it's not like something's going to come up where he has to put the brakes on it, because if something comes up that's crazy, then the community is already going to slam on the brakes and say, you can't do that. I think in this case, the term dictator just refers to his access to the repo. He gets to tag stuff and release stuff.
Yeah.
And that he's very simply taking himself out of that loop so that you can't go to him and say, can this be pushed or can this be discussed? Because like he said here, very rarely do I get asked for an opinion, and usually it's not actually important. So now he's just removing the occasional it's not actually important part.
Yeah.
And he still gets to be involved in the community. He's still the guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I think he's removing his own permissions from the system at a certain point.
That's gotta be weird, man. Could you imagine being the creator of Python and just coming to the realization of, hey, this is not my project anymore. I don't really need to be the head of this project anymore.
Isn't that what having teenagers is like, though? Just that process of going, I just can't control. They're just on their own now. Why are they still in the house? Essentially, he's kicking his kids out of the house. He's saying, you're old enough. Get the fuck out.
I don't know, that would be weird to me. I know I'm pretty protective of the code I write. I don't like people touching my code, and yeah, maybe that's why I never really became a very good open source developer. I always wanted to be one, but I just never had a good enough idea of something that enough people needed to make it worth developing. And nor was did I ever feel like I was good enough to actually develop it. I still fight imposter syndrome.
I'm gonna be abandoning the Laravel IronQ project pretty soon.
Really? Why is that?
Oh.
Well, at work, we're moving away from IronQ. It's an unnecessary expense given all of the options that we have now. Laravel matured to make other options significantly better.
Uh-huh.
And
so you're gonna be stepping away from the Laravel collective as a whole, or just that one project?
I'm only involved in it as that one project. I'd actually like to get involved in some of the other stuff we still use, but the Laravel collective sort of exists just to cover 4.0 stuff that got deleted from the 5.0 branch.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long it's expected to survive anyways.
So it's slowly getting less and less relevant. I mean, I know the big one that stayed relevant for a long time was the Blade stuff, the HTML stuff that they kept current.
Which I still use.
Yeah, a lot of people still use that one. I mean, that's yeah. Well, thanks for the effort you did do.
I did a good amount. I think I kept it maintained from 5.1 to 5.6.
Yeah. So what else you guys up to? Anything?
Well, I mean, you're just opening it up for doom and gloom here. But John said he had stuff.
I did.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about how great of a contribution you've provided the last 2 episodes, and just because you didn't have items on your list doesn't mean you have nothing to say.
Way to call me out there, bastard.
Well, there's dead air. I had to do something.
You should be used to that at this point. We're like an hour into this thing, so it's already done.
We're ready to wrap up.
I've got
Okay.
some interesting
40
stuff.
minutes.
I've got interesting
Good.
stuff. There's a new RFC for PHP that I really enjoy.
Okay.
User-defined object comparison.
Do explain.
You can do right now various different bizarre comparisons of objects, such as date times and things like that. And it seems like you sort of get a random result out of it, usually. And the idea here is to introduce new built-in methods for handling object comparison. So right now, you can't really say, is this object equal to this object, unless they're identical. This would introduce the underscore equals method, so that it returns an expected result. So when you say object equals object, you would receive object 1 into object 2, and object 2 would process it with the underscore equals method.
Is that really necessary?
I was just wondering the same thing.
It could be, because if you've got a couple different types of date time objects that might return different things when they're toString, because toString is the current method used for comparison.
Right.
But toString is the same for less than, greater than, less than or equal, greater than or equal, or equals, or not equals. It's just always toString.
Okay.
So this would allow you to have the underscore compare to method, which would process greater than or less than, and greater than or equal than, less than or equal than. So you can put additional logic into your stuff where you can process things that aren't strings, or things that wouldn't be processed correctly as strings.
I just can't think of a time where I've needed that.
Let's say you have 2 objects that measure the weight of vehicles in different units. You've got a kilogram object. You've got an object that measures in kilograms and an object that measures in pounds.
Okay.
You could incorporate into your base trait for those objects the universal way of measuring these 2 items. So you could say, when you're comparing these 2 items, always make it equal kilograms. So my underscore equal converts my object into kilograms first, and then checks for a value comparison.
Versus having that method on there already and calling it and comparing it.
Right, because this function as an operator.
I probably never use it.
Not every new function is the most
Congdon's
amazing
not impressed.
functionality, but
You
I
did not
like
get
it.
a seal of approval from Congdon. All right.
I think it'd just be confusing
Yeah.
for me. But then again, I'm not that good of a programmer, so. Speaking of which, have you guys read the Gang of Four, the design patterns book?
I've
Gang
tried
of
to
Four?
many times.
So-
Is it on Audible?
I've been hearing people talk about it for years, and like I feel like I have a conceptual idea of design patterns, but I finally bought it, started reading it recently. So now I want to do a presentation at SDPHP on design patterns specifically, or do a series of talks at a meetup, because
I'll
I
send you
think
mine,
for-
because I did the Gang of Four design pattern talk at SDPHP.
Okay,
can you
just for the record, don't look for Gang of Four on Audible. There's just a lot of porn.
on Audible?
Yeah, it's a lot of porn. a lot of very naughty books, and oddly enough, a couple of children's books in there. I don't know. I'm very conflicted here with these search results.
Conflicted is not supposed to be the term you use there. You should be solidly don't want to hear audio porn or children's books.
I didn't know audio porn was a thing.
Yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't think it wasn't a thing. I mean, you've heard of oral sex, right? Is that not the same? No,
that's with an AU.
I'm sorry.
Yes, the Gang of Four. The Gang of Four book is very dense. It was intended for C, I believe. Or no, I'm sorry, C++.
I mean, it's just taking design patterns. It wasn't meant for any specific language, really.
Well, that book though, all of the examples are C++.
Sure, I'm sure most of it. I'm not into it far enough to know, but it's more about the concepts than necessarily the code.
I tried to get into it, and I got up to the protocol design pattern, and that's a rough one.
I'll check it out. My big thing is that I'm working with people that know design patterns makes it really difficult because I'm used to just getting stuff done, right? And when you start having other people pick apart your work, not in a bad way, they're just like, well, you should replace this with this type of object and that with that type of object, and here's how you make them talk together properly. And it's like, okay, I just want this to work, and it works the way it is. Do I really have to make these changes?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like,
you guys use repositories.
It's not. Yeah, I mean that's what I was saying. It's nice being at the level that I'm at, or that we're at, and getting more and more into kind of the computer sciencey piece of development. But I start to hit that ceiling where I'm like, okay, I've reached my limit of understanding of what the hell you're saying. Now I know how to get this done. Let me get it done. And I have to fight through that because I do appreciate and do enjoy learning this stuff so much that I have to. But I'm with John on this. It's like you feel like a intern again. You feel like again impersonation syndrome. Like, wait a minute, I've never really been a developer because I don't understand these conversations, and I'm not at that level.
And the repository pattern is just a pattern. I mean,
yeah, but you use it.
Yeah,
like you use it out of hand. That's my thing is that.
But some people say, I mean, that like the way I use a repository pattern, and we had this conversation. I've had this conversation with you.
Absolutely,
I use it with
wrong.
With Laravel. There you go. I use it wrong. So I call it a repository pattern, but smarter people than me say, no, that's not a repository pattern. You don't know what you're talking about, and whatever.
To me, my experience with it is that it really breaks down to more files.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to make
all of it is more files. That's
right.
End of day, it's all methods. It's all PHP code. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's a method with PHP code.
Right.
I mean,
and my experience with design patterns is, why would you need to use a transform design pattern here? And it's like, well, if you work every day in stuff that needs to be transformed, then the transform design pattern works really great, and you just start using it, or you've been using it and didn't notice. And as Laravel developers, we use a lot of the core design patterns without even thinking. I mean, just MVC is model view controller. That's 3 design patterns right there.
Yeah, but there's tons of them, and not that you need to use every single one of them, but having the knowledge of what some of them are, and then realizing that, oh, I could be doing things a different way, or my code could be more reusable if I made these types of changes, or could be more consistent if I made these types of changes.
I've always had an issue with the factory pattern. And I saw an implementation of the factory pattern at the meetup last night, and I just sort of went, "Oh, that makes total sense."
See, I've been doing
Now
a lot
I-
of
now I
factories
understand.
lately, but I don't know if I'm doing them correctly.
If it helps you, it's correct. That's one of the caveats, and I think the introduction to the books is these are ideas, these are patterns we like and we use, but don't think you have to.
Right.
This is only useful if it's useful. And if you get comfortable enough with them to use them when you want to, and decide not to, that's fine. It's just important to get comfortable with enough of them so that you can improve your code base. And we use tools in PHP Storm that notify us of bad patterns and bad smells all the time. I have literally every controller I have gives me an error about class has 3 parent classes. Consider using an appropriate design pattern. So that's I can't remember what plugin I have that does this. Oh, here we go. PHP Inspections Extended gives me a whole list of architecture recommendations. So if you want to get better design patterns, then just have your IDE tell you you could use a better design pattern right here, and it'll tell you. It's coding is the best way to learn coding.
It's funny. It's like the issue I have with using some design patterns is being known for using those design patterns. So it's like I feel like at work I'm the guy pushing the repository pattern. It's like, oh yeah, we do this because this is Eric's pattern. This is what Eric likes to see. I'm like, no, we should be doing this because we all agree this makes sense as the code, as a whole. But yeah, ultimately it's like, yeah, no, it's because I said so.
The joy of being the owner.
Yeah, and honestly, I think John can relate to this. Thomas, you might be able to relate to it as well. You surround yourself with enough smart people. Unfortunately, you could spend all day just talking about code and talking about approaches and talking about how to implement things. At some point, somebody has to put their foot down and say, okay, I've heard it. I've heard all the discussions. Here's how we're doing it. Let's go. Start generating some code.
And I've learned that from bosses in the past where I've said, I think you're wrong about this. And he said, whether or not I'm wrong, we need to get it done. So just do it my way. Yeah. And that's an important skill to have.
Well, I made a huge mistake a few years ago for like one of our very first clients. And I really wanted to do the eat your own dog food API first design, right? So we created the API and then I made the website use the API, but not directly within the code. It was actually, you make a call to the website and then the website was making yet another HTTP call to the API. And that extra latency was ridiculous. Looking back now, it's like, no, I could have used the API differently, used it internally to my application and still technically been using it. It was just, it seemed like such a waste at that point. But I already went way too far down the road before I realized it.
I'm trying to look up who it is that's doing a whole guide right now on HTTP codes. Do you guys know who that is? I thought it was Fabien Potencier.
I've seen lots of those things around, not necessarily a single person.
Yeah, I just threw one of them in my Evernote, I believe. Let me see
why. What are you looking it up for?
Because it's great. It's this idea of a little knowledge versus a lot of knowledge, and you reminded me of it because of the way you were requesting things through that API. But it ties into what we're saying is that we use HTTP codes all the time, 200s and 500s and 404s and stuff.
Yeah.
but there's an absolute ton of codes.
And
And-
then you get the people that are so like, no, you need to throw this error code, not that one. But
yeah.
And that's a
It
big
offers-
RESTful thing,
Yeah.
because REST counts on the HTTP code as part of the response, not the contents exclusively. Boy, what a bummer I can't find this.
I've seen some very funny ones out there too.
I swear I
This is
thought it.
making for an exciting show here.
Anyways, I'll find it.
Editing.
I'll find it and put it somewhere. Well, silence gets automatically clipped, but yeah, it's. I recommend everyone look it up when I find it.
It'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, where do the
Hopefully.
show notes go?
You mean just put it in the card in the Trello. It ends up on the website. Have you never
one of-
noticed this?
I have. One of the interesting things I found was I believe it's the 201 code. And the 201 code, which PHP actually can't set, means request received, I will stream a response to you. And the
Mhm.
browsers can handle that correctly. So you can
Maybe
actually...
PHP can't do that.
PHP can't set the code and then send data. It sends the headers as part of the response package altogether.
You can stream data, can't you?
You can't keep sending a 201 code. You can't repeatedly send a header. Headers are always at the top of the response package. Whereas with Node, you can continue to send headers after you've sent a text response.
Really?
Yeah.
How do browsers handle that? That doesn't make sense.
I'm trying to find it. I can't find who's writing it. God, this is killing me.
But browsers, by definition, look for the headers first, and then a blank line, and then all the content.
They can receive more.
But how would they know it was a header, not part of the content?
The same way that like chunking files works, where you can chunk data. You can chunk response data and say, I've sent you some stuff. Wait here and listen for more. There might be a header in the next part. I don't know. I'm trying to find it.
But you're saying it can't send a 201. You can send a 201 response code. You're just saying it can't send it multiple times. And I've never heard of that even being an option.
Is it Cal Evans?
So it's not a 201 thing. It would be any header at that point. You can't send multiple times because you just can't. I'm so confused. Eric, what am I missing?
I'm looking at Reddit pictures, so I've
You said you
out.
had it in Evernote.
I looked, I couldn't find it, and then I ended up on Reddit.
Oh, I thought you were back on Audible. You listen to that first one; it's horrible.
Yeah.
Eric,
oh,
tell
really?
me,
You were listening to the samples?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think to do that.
It's horrible.
Tell you what.
Absolutely horrible. You think I was listening to you guys? No. Our listeners don't listen to you. What makes you think I am?
our listeners. Oh, well, maybe they do. This is killing me, and now I'm on Feedly, and I can't even get it to show me my subscriptions.
Fun topic. All right, move off of HTTP status codes.
Is that what we're talking about?
I think that's what we started talking about.
What's the read? What is it? Read it later. You didn't have it there.
Eric, did you go through and delete all your cards?
Yeah, they
Oh,
were
okay.
worthless.
Cute.
They were pretty worthless. Mm. Mm.
I
Let's
can't.
see,
I can't
HTTP.
search in Feedly because that's a paid feature.
Is it?
Ugh.
But just to be clear,
I'm
we're still waiting on you, right?
No.
I totally came across it somewhere. I don't know why it's not in my Evernote. It's not in my pocket either. I don't know where I put that.
John, you say something and I'll get back to you.
What do you want me to say?
I'm confused. So I will switch over to New Relic. I know we've talked about it in the past, but geez, I love those custom metrics. Being able to,
Jeez, it's
Kinda-
so expensive.
I know, but being able to kind of profile your code in production somewhat seamlessly without adding too much overhead is pretty nice, because we know where we have some bottlenecks, but trying to dig down and figure out where they're at has only been possible with the custom metrics.
Mm.
And just before we started recording tonight, I opened up a pull request to say, in the custom metric, if it's above a certain threshold, hit us in Slack, because all we're seeing in New Relic is kind of averages, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I want to give me more data at this point. Like, okay, what users logged in and is experiencing this, so I can go and kind of replicate what they're doing. Not personally identifiable information, just kind of a user ID, so I know where it's happening, so I can start figuring out the data set I need. Reached out to New Relic to be a sponsor of Wave PHP, and they turned me down. It's annoying, and I talk about them on the show, and I shun it.
All the more reason I don't
Really?
like them.
Really?
That's the confusing part. I reached out to all these services that I think, I don't know that all developers know about your service. This would be a great fit, sponsor us, let us, tout your product.
Mhm.
And we had one company come back and say they couldn't because of legal reasons. I still don't get that.
So weird.
Well,
Yeah.
it's that thing we did that one time.
This is a service that one of our clients actually pays for. It's the only reason I knew about them is they stumbled upon it somewhere and started paying. So I was like, hey, this is actually a good service. Why don't we, why don't you
We've
sponsor
actually had some
Wave
pretty
PHP?
We've actually had some pretty weird responses to the trying to find sponsors. I don't know. But yeah, the whole legal thing was different.
Everpot. Do you guys subscribe to Everpot?
That seems like a random word. What, I don't even know what Everpot is.
Everett Pot. That's his name.
Oh, Everett.
Everett. Evert. Evert.
Everpot is his last name?
Yeah. Great blogger.
All right.
And yeah, he's been doing a series breaking down all of the HTTP status codes one at a time.
Ah, I see this.
And they're pretty cool. Stuff like 101 switching protocols.
You just found this.
I've been looking
Pulled this
for
out
it
your
for like
ass.
10
You
minutes
pulled
now.
this out of your ass.
102 processing is one I really like. It's he says it's a rare status code. I think this is the one that PHP cannot do, but Node can. And it just says, "Yeah, I got your request, but hold on, I'm still thinking."
So it's not, it has nothing to do with streaming. It's holding a connection open.
That's a different one. The streaming is a different one. Interesting stuff. I like the inside of the browser look.
I still don't know why you would use the processing one. You're just sending that header over and over again, basically holding the connection open, which it should be open anyway.
Well, the idea is that the browsers nowadays are becoming more and more complex creatures. Apps are being written completely in HTTP. And adding functionality like method failure, proxy authentication timeout or required, or payment required, 402, payment required. I mean, these kinds of things can result in new functionality in web applications that doesn't exist yet. So if you have a 402, you can still return an HTTP request, but it can also signal to the browser that a credit card was needed or some other message should be displayed. Or, if you're writing a plugin for Chrome and Firefox and Edge and what have you, these might be important indicators that you can grab to display additional behaviors.
The problem is there's no true standard set currently. I mean, you can put
There's
whatever
literally a
code you
standardized
want.
set.
It's not you could return any code you want.
You can.
You can give it any name you want.
Sure, but these are all, or they're mostly handled by RFCs. Microsoft has introduced some, Google has introduced some, but there's a consortium working on these kinds of things.
Is it consortium or consortium?
I don't know. You're the one running a conference.
The schedule or schedule?
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 Excited about the Keynote, though.
The what?
The Keynote speaker?
The Keynote. Yeah. Okay, so I'm dropping a couple things in the show notes. I mean, not a whole lot to talk about here, but I'm dropping a couple. I've gotten stuck. I've gotten hooked on this Wired magazine series where they like explain things, and they've had a couple now that I've been like, that was very entertaining. One was they had a hacker that was talking about the methods used by, I guess, Ocean's 8, the new Ocean's movie, had a hacking aspect to it. And he was essentially breaking down some of the methods that the hacker was using in the movie. And it was just like, it was kind of doom and gloomy. I mean, obviously it was, it was cool because he was like, yeah, what she just did is a real thing. And this is how it's done. And he does a really good job at explaining stuff.
It's a video too. It's not an article you have to read.
Yeah, it's a video. It's really good for. I mean, obviously the geeks will like it. I'm sure a lot of people will find flaws with it, but it's more for like I want to show my wife, my kids this, and say, yeah, this stuff is real. This is how it's happened. This is why I tell you have to be careful when you do certain things. Because he does a really good job of breaking it down. But then I watched another one yesterday that I fell in love with, and it was this person discussing quantum computing, and she's explaining quantum computing to like these varying levels of people who would understand. So she starts with like a very young child. I mean, the kid must have been like 10 years old or something, and she explains what quantum computing is. And then she moves on to, it might have been like a high schooler, then somebody starting college, and somebody very deep into computer science degree. And, then eventually she ends up talking to other quantum compute people.
I've seen something very, very similar to this, not quantum computing, but just a different topic where they do the same thing, trying to explain something to 5 different levels of people. It is entertaining.
The quantum computing is just absolutely fascinating. I'm like, wow, I like want to do this now. That is so cool that sort of thing is still happening.
You say fascinating. I say horrifying.
Yeah.
Well, you should listen to her explain it, because you might feel better about it. But it is super, super impressive what they're trying to accomplish, and she's very honest about the challenges that they have and whether or not they'll be able to accomplish it, and how people just say, oh yeah, encryption keys aren't going to matter because you have quantum computers. And she's like, yeah, in theory, this is true, but we're so far off from being able to do that still. And kind of explains a lot of that. It's good stuff.
I don't know
Yeah,
what's
there's-
in the actual content of the video, but I like the first comment on YouTube. My computer costs $600 and can run Minecraft and calculator at the same time.
Which one is that? The quantum computing one?
Bad news is it just stops running Minecraft while you're running the calculator for a short enough time that you don't notice.
We need to see if Talia Gershon can come and do a keynote for us.
Who?
She seems
This
chick,
woman,
the quantum computing lady.
she works at IBM Research.
Yeah, she seems really cool. I loved listening to her explain things. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah.
By the way, nope, I'm going back to keynote. Eric, our second keynote confirmed today.
Oh, who is it?
Well, I can't tell you yet.
Yeah, I know.
So we have our closing keynote now.
Awesome. All right, we'll have to add that person to the list.
schedule.
The schedule. I assume airfare and all that.
I love that
I've
the torture
asked,
both ends
I'm not
and
sure.
starts for me in the same episode. I know who the keynote speaker is. Well, you don't anymore.
Funny thing is, Thomas, you do. You know who the second keynote speaker is. I guarantee you know this person.
Well,
It's
you
not,
know the
it's not
person.
Everett Pot.
And
Is
it's not Talia Gershon. But
God, I hate you guys. This is how long is it going to be this time? Like three months?
yeah, after the conference.
during the final keynote, I'll go, oh, okay.
Let's have the lights flashing. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
Funny.
It ends up being me. I'm just standing on stage. Don't know how I got there.
I told
Microwaves.
Sean.
Did you know your microwave's spying on you?
Doom and Gloom 101.
I told John, I swear, if I could have figured out a way to tweet that out and block you from seeing the tweet, I totally would have done that.
Not in a
no
mean
one
way.
would tell real right out. Yeah.
Just in a way that friends do to other friends.
A
on
loving brotherly
podcast.
sort of way.
Yeah.
Loving brotherly sort of way. Yes, we have another streak. Well, that's cool. Well, that takes a little stress off my shoulders.
Yep.
I'm very curious to hear what the topic is. Yes.
I asked this person what it was. As of 5 hours ago, they finally got back to me and said, I'm in. So then I said, all right, well, I need the title, and do you need airfare and hotel covered, or will your employer pay for that? Hint, 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 hint.
Does your employer want to be a sponsor?
Your employer is big enough. They probably make good money. Hint.
It's not my company, is it?
No.
I don't know what we would even present on.
Well, you'd present on. I just don't know that. I think it might break the code of conduct.
It might, just maybe.
Possibly.
I've been working on a different branch of our brand identity lately. It's been distressing. It was fine until just getting like a specific streaming service up and running, and a lot of just sort of shock exposure, just sudden, oh my god, like that kind of.
See, oh my god, I forget what I do for a living. Jesus.
You really do. I work with like a stock of 15 images that I cycle through on their test systems and our development systems. And after 3 years, you get real image blind to a lot of this stuff. And sometimes stuff will get updated, and it's just like bam. And yeah, it can be rough occasionally. Oh God! You guys ready for some
All
doom
right.
and gloom?
Oh, I thought we were ending.
Man, I was so ready to wrap this up.
I mean, that's. I mean, to me, this is my doom and gloom today. Is I have nothing. That
Ah,
that makes me
there's-
feel. That makes me
there's
feel
hope in
as
the
bad
world.
as I could about doom and gloom.
What? You do have quite the reputation of being Mr. Doom and Gloom now.
Well, we've long held the rule of no politics, and things
Which
have
we
just
do.
become such a shit show that all of my doom and gloom is politics now. As politics have woven their way into everything I hate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
But we can't
God,
talk about it.
no,
Yeah, can't talk about it. Can't talk about it.
wouldn't want a big crying baby. That would
I
be
don't
bad.
appreciate it when you say it cry, Thomas.
Not crying. I got whiskey on my cheeks. Shut up.
All right. Is that it? Are we done with episode?
We're
I'm
113?
afraid so. I'm afraid we've done it to our listeners again.
Oh, who saw the tweet, by the way? Did anybody see the tweet about how often we record? No?
No.
Really?
No.
You guys have got to follow Twitter closer.
No, I do. I do. What are you talking about?
Somebody tweeted. I can't. Develosaurus. Develosaurus. I think it's the developer dinosaurs. Anyways, he posts a list of all the podcast shows he's listening to. And it's PHP Ugly,
Oh,
Dads and Dev, PHP Ugly, PHP Roundtable, PHP Ugly, North Meets South, PHP Ugly, and then he says, chatty dudes at PHP Ugly, catching up on various PHP podcasts. I have more of the ugly than the rest combined.
we set a high bar. I like it.
Yeah. I think some of the other podcasters are just stop recording. They're like, oh, forget it. Forget these guys are just like they talk too much and they have nothing good to say. So, but yeah, it's always fun to see
Hasn't stopped us yet.
Devlosaurus, thank you for the nod. We do appreciate it. Yeah, I forget. I mean, honestly, I do forget. We have people who listen on a fairly regular basis that we'll hear from, and it's always good, and you kind of get used to like that friendship, like hearing from them. But I still forget that like other random people listen to us. Like this conversation isn't between the three of us. Other people, my little niece who just spent a couple weeks out here with us, went back to Pittsburgh, and she commented on the last show. I'm like, oh shit, why is she listening to us?
She's going to hear this one too.
I'm sure she's fallen asleep by now. I mean, I give people credit who listen, but I really tip my cap to people who get through the entire show. It's like, yeah, that's you guys are, yeah, you're glutton for punishment there.
You know that as editor, I have to get through the entire show twice.
Yeah, and yeah, I know. I mean, I need to pick up the editing duties. I've been so busy. So I appreciate you doing that.
I can't. I was gonna get on your case about it, but you guys are both trying to organize a conference, so I figure that your guys' work is a little on the harder scale than mine. I'm trying to figure out why this thing keeps saying anal when it's not an anal scene.
Real world problems of the coders in the porn industry. It's like, what am I missing here? We really need to dive into your work one day, Thomas.
I still want to do.
I love the fact how open you are about the fact that you work in the adult industry, you code, and a lot of the code you do is around porn sites. But that's not all
of
you
it,
do.
yeah.
I mean, no, it's not. You don't only code porn sites. You do management stuff.
Yeah, CMS is for porn sites.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point.
It's still the same.
I mean, yeah, but it's not for pleasure; it's for business.
Right. And what's been interesting to me is that I think it's been close to 10 years where it's been adult content only for me.
Right.
I've worked with this kind of stuff just for so long now that it doesn't strike me at all.
And you've worked for again. You've been open about this. I don't think I'm shocking anybody here, but you've been pretty honest that you've worked for some shady people, and you've made moral decisions to move on, and fortunately, we know where you work now. We actually know some of the people you work with, and know that despite being in the adult industry, a lot of people have some moral judgments around that the company and the people you work for are actually very good people. And
great people. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of everybody I work with. It's nice to have a company that I can say, yeah, no, I like all these guys. They're great.
Yeah. We should dive into that at some point. I think people who listen to the show would appreciate that.
I've been meaning to put together a presentation on the ins and outs, but that doesn't work.
That's horrible. The ups and downs.
The ups,
that doesn't work either.
No. The give and take. No.
Yeah.
Still working on the title. Still working on the title of that presentation. Once I get the title straightened out, nope, that's not gonna work.
Rubbing out good code, nope, that's bad.
No. Bang on the keyboard, no.
That's a good one, man. I like that one.
So no, I've there's a lot to learn from working in this industry specifically, and I think there's a lot of presentations to give. My number one thing is security. I'm a security-focused person, generally speaking, and guess who all the biggest targets are?
Yeah.
So
for sure.
That's something that we just have to be constantly aware of, and I've learned a lot of lessons from it. So, yeah, we'll have an episode. I'll go over a bunch of different stuff when I'm not feeling like my head's going to explode.
We need to do an AMA with you. This week on PHP Ugly, AMA, the real write-out, doom, gloom, and boobs.
My boss has not been against it in the past, doing a Reddit AMA.
Yeah. No, then screw Reddit, man.
Well, but then Pornhub beat us to it.
Oh, really? They beat you to it?
Yeah, I can't use that. Can't use that either. Beat us to it. No. Let's see.
All right, I think I was wrapping this up. We're wrapping this up again. Let's wrap it up again. You've been listening to episode 113 of PHP Ugly. I'm Eric Van Johnson.
I'm John Congdon.
I'm Tom Rideout.
Keep it ugly.
Keep it ugly.